Some people just interview guests. I like interviewing my mirrors. And Dov Baron is a dangerous one because he doesn't just ask you about your goals or your leadership style or whatever polite question we all hide behind. He asks much more irritating questions, like, who did you have to become to survive this life you came from? And once you see that, you can't unsee it. The armor, the hustle, the charm, the hypervigilance, all the little superpowers that made you effective and quietly insane. Dev calls it your emotional source code, and I see it as the moment you realize the biggest force shaping your life may not be your talent, it might be the shadow you built to stay alive. Which is exactly why I wanted this conversation. Because the work we're doing to power True You and the New Solutions Network lives inside the same uncomfortable neighborhood. Identity under pressure. What happens when versions of you that got you here start breaking into the next chapter? Dov's been around in that cave longer than I have, so this conversation is part interview, part me sitting down with someone a few miles further down the road and asking, all right, what did you find down there in the dark? What if your story could ignite a movement? At New Solutions Network, we merge truth, resilience, and reinvention, fueling shows that cut past the noise and light up what really matters: human potential. Police, athletes, survivors, incarcerated folks, visionaries, we bring raw, real voices the world needs to hear. Want to share your story? Want to sponsor change? Now is the time. New Solutions Network, unlocking the future, one voice at a time. Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Natanya Experience. Today's guest doesn't just talk about transformation, he codes it. Dov Baron is a brilliant mind behind the emotional source code. He helps leaders expose hidden drivers of behavior and belonging. And he's also the host of Dov Baron Show, among a couple other things we'll get into. Thank you so much for being here. I want to invite our audience into something a bit like a mythic journey today, right? We're going to trace the invisible architecture of who we are, the
Beautiful.
emotional rivers that flow beneath our consciousness. And let's set the stage for sort of meaning, belonging, and action. Your work with the emotional source code is like archaeology of the soul, right? Excavating
Mhm.
the subterranean programming of identity, tribe, and purpose, right? So our projects here with the Natanya Experience and our True You stuff, we actually kind of traverse similar, complementary territory, I think, because we're exploring ultimately also how people can connect and reconnect and unlock maybe their visceral embodied power and lead from
Mhm.
a place for you, especially with leaders, right, of healing, integrity, and resonance. So hopefully this is like an emotional truth interview with some nuggets that, like we said right before camera, where you said, ask me whatever the f you want, and I was like, amazing,
Yep.
that's gonna be a good interview.
Right.
So Dove, welcome, the CEO whisperer. Pretty cool moniker.
Thank you. That's very kind. I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, you and I had a chat months ago, and
Yeah.
it was just such a great chat. And because I love that you're looking for and showing up with honesty, and I think that oftentimes, particularly in the world we live in, everything's about the image.
Mm.
And I understand it. I'm not judging it. I understand it, but we're all hungry for something a little deeper. And so thank you for inviting me on to have that conversation.
Absolutely. So before we get into like all the cool stuff of what you do now, right? Can we slow down and like go back in time and like strip away the Dove Baron brand, your reputation, and all the rooms you're invited into, right? I'm curious about who is Dove before anyone listened. Can you walk us through your origin story and
Sure.
if you can, a little bit of, because you said I have, I've slipped, I've fallen, I've gotten into some things. I really would love to know, you know, without necessarily the perfect sound bites, what got you to this emotional source code? I think that would be really interesting for a lot of people.
There's a lot to unpack there. Because I remember I put myself into therapy when I was, I think I was 19.
Mm.
Now we should start with the fact that I was born in a ghetto in Northern England with an abject poverty. People didn't go to therapy voluntarily. I did. So I got there and my doctor's name, wait for it, her name was Dr. Dick. That was actually her name,
Was this in the
D-Y-C-K.
1980? What was this year?
Oh,
Give us
no,
the
this
time
is,
frame.
70 in the late 70s,
Late 70s. Okay, yeah,
right?
sorry.
So
Yeah, I
I
wanna
go to her.
frame the time. In the
Yeah,
70s, head shrinker, female in the
yeah,
UK, Dr. Dick.
yeah,
You're
Dr. Dick,
electing to go see her. Got it.
it's
Just
just, like, so
basic.
bizarre, and so she says, "Did your doctor send you?" "No, I didn't." "Why? Why are you here then?" I said, "There's gotta be more than this. This doesn't make any sense." Now, I'd been on a, quote, "spiritual journey" since I was a child. My mother had sent me to, rabbis to study with, and I'd been into metaphysical understanding even as a little kid because my mom thought my head was going to spin around and I was going to vomit green stuff on her. Um, so I was always this different kid. I was dyslexic. I had all kinds of other issues. I am a polymath, but that wasn't recognized as a child. And as a child, I was just a kid who couldn't keep focused, not because I was all over the shop like an ADD kid, but because I would bring things into the argument that would piss off the teachers.
Yeah,
So I'd be like,
divergent
"Well,
thinking was not cool in the 70s, as
no."
pretty close to your age and very similar, by the way, attributes
Right.
and things with me,
So
which is
so
probably
it
why we
got
get along. It's like they didn't know what to do with that. It's like, you
exactly. So they
stay in
didn't know
your
what to do with
room,
me,
just put your
and
head down and do what you have to do.
yeah, so, "Can you do this?" And so my wife and I were talking last night, and I said, "If you really look at who I am," and this sounds egoic, but it's a reference to myself for myself. It's like, I do the fucking impossible. Like, I was born in a ghetto, couldn't read, absolute abject poverty, struggled in everything, was skinny as a rail, was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis at 19 and told I would be in a wheelchair. Um, was convinced even in my early 30s that I would never find somebody I would want to be with for the rest of my life. I've gone on, I've written 8 books, I think it is now. Plus, I write 2 full blown articles a week, right? So write over 100 full in depth articles a year. I have a pretty reasonably famous podcast. I've traveled all over the world, spoken all over the world. I became a bodybuilder, a martial artist, a boxer, a Jungian psychologist, a neuroscientist. I've done all these it's like, and in my late 30s, met the woman of my dreams. I've been married for almost 30 years to the most magnificent creature I could possibly imagine, who is the greatest blessing of my life. I have children and grandchildren. It's freaking magnificent. It's impossible for that boy to imagine that I would become this man. And I would challenge you as you listen to this, like, take yourself back and have a conversation with that kid you were, and just see how you're living the impossible. And particularly if your life feels like shit right now.
Yes.
If you've hit the wall, remember that if you go back in time, my nephew, my sister and my nephew came to visit me after I fell 120 feet from free climbing. You know this.
Mm.
I was an adrenaline junkie. I fell
No
120 feet.
relation to that at all.
No,
Myself.
no, none at all.
Mhm.
Got
It's
smashed to
looking in a
pieces.
mirror, this whole thing.
Like, I just look better as a blonde. And the beer's not for you, by the way. So my sister came to visit me after I fell, and I was in recovery. I think it was like 2 years or a year and a half in the recovery, and I was really struggling financially and every emotionally, every possible level. And my nephew, who at the time I think was 9, and he came to visit. He's with my sister, and he's in my house. And I get in my secondhand BMW, and I'm living in this decent place, but really financially struggling to even cover the rent. And my nephew says to me, "Uncle Dov," and I go, "What?" He goes, "What's it like to be a millionaire?" And I went, I wanted to correct him, but something in me stopped myself, and I realized, oh my god, if I go back in time to being that age, my life is magnificent. I am wealthy beyond imagining to that child. And it's a reminder for all of us that you are living the impossible life of the child self. and that it's not a major decision. We think of our lives as being this, oh, this was the turning point. No, it isn't. It's the 10 million little decisions
Yep.
you made that were course corrections or course redirections that changed everything. So for me, that's where it came from. And that's the beginning of my internal journey that took me on a journey of understanding that in ways which I could serve.
That's incredible, and just to, like, add some sort of tropes, but hopefully they're interesting, to that in terms of, some of my own parallel paths can't help but see that, but also looking at when we're trying to motivate others, looking at people that they recognize. So whether your hero is Michael Jordan or Martin Luther King Jr. or Dov Baron, we think about what you just said, that sort of, I forgot the word, when you zoom out, when the astronauts look at Earth and get that distance, right? That
Yeah.
space.
The overview.
The overview, thank you. And then that, vision for the possibility of a future that doesn't exist today, that's not in front of you today. So I think, as someone also who would be like, "I can jump off that, I can climb that, I could do that, I can act this or whatever," even though I've never done any of those things, just like you, people would be like, "Well, how do you know?" And I'd be like, "Well, you don't actually know. You just think, 'Maybe I can,' and you start to embody that feeling like you've already done it." And, that's the kind of simple, and it doesn't really cost much, but it is a calibration that requires, a commitment to it, right? Because if you do it halfway, that's where it doesn't. And then sometimes, as you said, it works out, and sometimes you literally or metaphorically fall down. And how do you keep going? And I think that's the thing that people look at, maybe externally, someone like you, and just think, well, he's just really smart and he had really good thoughts and he studied really hard and now he tells people how to behave and how to function.
Not quite like that.
Why I
So one of the things you just described, which I think is important, is that you are able to visualize yourself doing the what seems impossible. I have aphantasia. Do you know
Mhm.
what aphantasia is?
Oh my gosh, so you can't, well, I'll let you
I
use.
can't visualize.
I was gonna say you can't imagine
Now,
that.
just so you understand, um, in the early 2000s, I had about 30 visualization meditations that I put out that were eaten up. People loved them. I'm so good at doing it because I can't picture it.
You have to describe and
I have to
craft
describe
so
every detail of it. So
viscerally.
I can't because there's no vision in my head. I can't actually remember pictures. They don't work. It doesn't work for me like that. Right. So, because I have aphantasia. So what I have to do is go the other way and try to, because I can't remember in pictures. What I can remember is in feelings.
Yeah,
So I
feeling.
can remember the feeling of doing something that seemed impossible. And then I project that feeling forward.
Yeah, so I should have been more careful, but that's really good that you said that because that's actually what I meant. It was the feeling of, and what will it feel like after you do this, whatever, right? And what will it feel like to be like, well, yeah, I'm a millionaire and I'm on my way. And I dipped down a little bit. I'm going back to your statement earlier. Um,
Right.
and so not feeling about the focus. The other thing is the immediate sort of the horse blinder focus on what visually or viscerally, what's right in front of you today, like I can't pay my rent, as you were saying, rather than I've done this, I've come back from it, I'm going here, and look who's looking at it. That's incredible. I mean, you work with some of the most influential leaders on the planet, so
Mhm.
obviously you've been able to have a foundation that relates as well as a steering. But I was wondering about some of these folks who, because you are a little different than some of the people that you and I have both had as clients,
Really?
and that, well, because power doesn't usually make people self-aware. It
Right.
actually, right? I would just say it's a general statement, but do you
Mhm.
find that I found that sometimes it makes people more actually armored, right? And
Yes.
so I was wondering, like, how you kinda came to that shift and when you started noticing in that sort of the success without the internal alignment is actually can break someone or at least erode their ability to really do what they wanna do.
Well, obviously, I mean, anything that lands that truly lands has to have its basis in authenticity. And, in 1990, I was the most successful I'd ever been. I was traveling around, I was speaking, I was 6 weeks waiting list just to have a conversation with me. It was great. I knew I was successful because I drove a big American car, And what I mean by that, it didn't do miles to the gallon, it did gallons to the mile. Um, but as a kid, as a really poor kid, having a big American car was like, oh, that means you've made it.
Yeah.
So that I had that. I had a Ford LTD. It was a monster, right? And then I fell, and I remember being all smashed up. So there's a lot of gory details we don't need to go into there, but 5 near death experiences. And I remember that my jaws wired closed, and my face was turned into mush. Um, 11 reconstructive surgeries, but my jaws wired closed. And my buddies would come and take me out on a Saturday night, not every Saturday night, but occasionally. And we'd go out, and with my jaw wired closed, they'd say, "How you doing?" And I'd go, "I'm great. I'm coming back." But I wasn't great, and I wasn't coming back. And I'd go out with them, and I'd pretend to laugh.
Hmm.
And I'd feel like, "Oh, I'm faking this, but it'll happen eventually if I keep faking it." But it wasn't happening. And then one Saturday night, I went out with the lads, and I had a good night. I had a great night. I had fun. It was powerful. And I thought, "Oh yeah, I'm walking down my back path towards my home, feeling like, yeah, I'm coming back. This is gonna be good." I laughed. I had this little spark of hope. And I open the back door, and the light from outside goes across the floor, and across the floor in the kitchen there is garbage festooned everywhere. There is empty packets and empty tins and kitty litter and coffee grinds, and it smells disgusting. And I've gone from that spark of hope to pure unadulterated rage. I mean, I'm not mad. I can't comprehend. I'm enraged, and I want to find the culprit who did this, and I feel like I want to kill that culprit. And I'm marching through the house, and as I get into the living room, there on the couch is the culprit, curled up, all comfy, and I lift my hand to strike, but I'm not a violent person. And so as soon as my hand comes up, I'm like, "Well, that's not me." Like something in me just switched off, arm down, and I leaned down and scooped up my cat in my arms. And the cat was cold and dead. The cat had done it. The cat had had a distemper attack, and the cat had died. And I fell to my knees and I began to cry. And within 15 seconds, I was sobbing, just uncontrollably sobbing. And within probably another minute, I realized I'm not crying for the death of my cat. I died. I've just not faced it. And then I just laid on that floor for hours and hours, sobbing. And I realized I had 3 options in front of me. The first option was I could keep telling people I'm great, I'm coming back, but that wasn't working. The second option, which was the most seductive, which was I've got a victim story now. I don't really have to try that hard anymore. I've got this justifiable reason about why I didn't make it. And then the third option came, which is find your purpose, find your soul's purpose. Now, if you'd have asked me 5 seconds before I fell, is your life on purpose, Dov? I would have swore up and down it was.
Yeah.
I didn't know it wasn't. And my clients don't know that their life isn't until something dramatic happens.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that's a heart attack, or it's a divorce, or it's a bankruptcy, or it's some epic event, right? That they've never confronted that part of themselves. And a lot of them look incredibly on target. They look like they're so meaningful living. They've got the accolades, they've got the recognition, they're spiritual leaders, they're religious leaders, they're political leaders, they're business leaders, they're these sports leaders. Got all that. It looks like their life is on purpose.
Yeah.
And then they are confronted with that. Now, like me on that path walking to my kitchen, they may have that little spark of hope. I can get this back. But here's the deal, there is no back. We all want to be the phoenix, but the phoenix rises from the fire. In other words, shit has to burn down. And most of us will not stop until there's something to burn down. Now, here's the thing. Do you have to burn it all down? Or or if you get ahead of it, which is what I do, if you can get ahead of it, you can select what needs to be burned. We can select that, and we can resurrect what has been buried, bringing home the disenfranchised parts of yourself, which are not necessarily bad, or they're just in the shadows. Some of it's your greatest gifts. You bring those forward. Now your life is meaningful, it's rich, it's powerful, and you get to use all the skills you learned in survival mechanism that made you powerfully successful, but now you're using them as a force of meaning and purpose to lift lives up, to lift yourself up, to touch lives in ways that really matter, and to see what you refused to see before because now there's something bigger driving you.
Well, there's a lot there, and I'm trying to keep my composure because you're speaking to a small audience compared to you. And thank you for, by the way, granting me this interview when the David and Goliath situation is happening. And I'm just so grateful. But personally, having a moment because I'm going through that right now. And something I want to pull out that you said around choosing what you might want to pull out and either incinerate or re-examine or dust off or what that might be, because a lot of times, especially with young people in a sort of a different side of this, I say, maybe you don't need to like die or have a near death to kind of recalibrate. And I say to them, I was like, I don't recommend the way I learned my lessons. I'll say
No, I'm
I'm
with you.
not proud of it. But obviously I'm a little stubborn and I need to, I do big things. So I need to be pushed a little bit in a big way to pay attention. And like you said, there were things I also thought literally like top of the world, ma vibe, right before I had the most recent accident where before I was about to step forward and announce myself and this plan with this partner, I fell off the stage and I could never actually do that. And I thought that that was what we were supposed to do. And we had a lot of people involved in this
Mhm.
plan. And then it was gone. Right. So all of that was like, well, then what are we doing? And what are we doing it for? What am I doing? Will I ever be here again? All of those things. And I think that, that was a lot with the cat because you also talked about an arc that we all go through, whether it's an innocent animal or a spouse or partner or friend or family member that can maybe in our individual minds we feel like it's against us, right? Like maybe they said you're never going to be good at that, or this was terrible, or I don't love you anymore, or I don't know, insert phrase x here, right?
Mhm.
In that it is or they threw something down in front, like you said, the garbage was on the ground, right? And you take it as who did this to me. That's our
Exactly.
first, that
Yeah.
was your first thing, like who trashed my kitchen with the garbage, and
Right.
it's smelly and gross and disrespectful, and also, you know, you I guess you thought it might have been the animal and not a human, but in that moment, you were still angry, and like you said, you even r rose your hand up for a moment because it was a rage, it was a, "How dare," and I was so happy, I was just be trying to the corners of my mouth from my wired mouth shut were finally the glimmer, the light was coming on, and now you shit on me with this garbage, right? That's how
Exactly.
you felt.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
that feeling of in that moment, you stole my hope.
you took my
But here's the thing about hope. Most hope, and I get into a lot of fights about this.
okay.
Most hope is terrible. It's a terrible thing to have. You don't want hope. You want a commitment to purpose. It's different.
I think so
Hope
too.
is often built on, it's a sandcastle.
I think
One
that
good breeze
that
and it
hope
washes away.
and the asking for help, and I don't mean asking, I wanna clarify asking for help, meaning, like, asking from some external, like, "Please save me," to whatever you believe, universe, God,
Mhm.
source, what have you, um, and hope to me also take the agency away from us.
Right. I say I I I think that I'm certainly a very spiritual person, and I think about connecting to a unified field, but that unified field doesn't give a fuck about me. And people are like, "What do you mean?" And I said, the way to understand it is this. My belief, it's not the truth. Please get this. I am not saying this is the truth. It's my truth. My truth is this. If there is a God, and I would like to believe there is, I just don't call it God. So if there is something one would call God, it cannot judge me like the religions tell us, although I traveled the world to study many different religions and did all that. it can't judge me because it can't comprehend the things at which I judge, which I would be judged, because it's beyond that. Any more than I can judge the acts of an ant right or wrong. It's just like the ant's being an ant, right? So if this higher intelligence, this vast intelligence, it doesn't judge me, but I am created from it. I am the droplet in the ocean of it. And so the ocean does not judge the droplet that got left on the beach. It doesn't do that.
Right.
So that's how I see that. And so for me, it loves me no more and no less than Adolf Hitler, than Donald Trump, than Mother Teresa. It doesn't love me any less or any more. It just loves, and I live in that. And the question is, do I open the valve to that love, or have I closed the valve to that love? And so when I'm asking for guidance and I'm asking for help, quote unquote, I'm opening the valve. All I'm saying is, I'm sorry, I forgot I'm a drop of the ocean, but the ocean is me. I am the ocean is me. I am part of this vastness. And in that vastness of who I am, I've forgotten and I've become tiny. So now let me open to that. So, yes, I'm open to guidance, but it's not specifically for me. It's this, I'm opening to love. And when I open to that love, and love is not, I'm not talking about love as in, ooh, I love you.
Right.
Woo!
We're
Right?
not
I'm not talking
talking
about that kind of love.
everything.
Right? I'm talking about this agape, this greatness of love.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing for me, again, it's my truth, not the truth, is the path to that love is most often for us silly humans in our egoic way, is often through tragedy or grief. I remember sitting with Deepak Chopra, and we were both speaking at a brain conference, and he was talking about death and blah blah blah. And afterwards, I was chatting with him, and I said, "This is my quote," and he goes, "What is it?" And I said, "Grief is an ocean with unpredictable tides." And he goes, "Wow, where did you get that?" I go, "It's mine." He goes, that's profound." And I said, and the thing about it is that if the tide is always flat, we don't get the strength to swim. And so the tides of grief help me to become stronger and help me to recognize the beauty that's washing over me, so that I can enjoy that ocean, as opposed to standing on the beach being afraid to get in. But the problem is that most of the people that you and I would encounter think that they are enlightened, quote unquote, but they've forgotten to realize that enlightenment is a destructive process. Anybody I know who's enlightened has been through a destructive process. When
Yeah, and
Humpty
maybe
Dumpty
a
falls off the
few times,
wall, you're
maybe
not supposed to put him back together.
a few
Right.
times. You know,
Exactly.
not a one and done. Like, I went to the ashram, I had my third eye open, and here I am. Now let's look at the
Yeah.
piano. I mean,
And
it
now
doesn't go like that.
doesn't it's a completely destructive process. The last part of your most recent enlightenment was falling off a bloody stage, where you're about to talk about life after death.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
Hold on a second. Like, could you slap me a little harder with the wet fish of irony, please?
I
Right?
know, it's so stupid. It's like, it sounds pretend, but it's
It's
not true.
magnificent, right? It's magnificent. When I say to people all the time, I literally fell off the mountain. You you don't call it a mountain because it's a divorce. You don't call it a mountain because it's a bankruptcy. You don't call it because it's a diagnosis. You don't call it because it's a reputation. But it's
Right.
your fucking mountain.
Exactly.
It's your mountain. And the problem is, you're asking me to help you get you to the top of the mountain. What? So you can fall again? No, I'm going to have you sit at the bottom and say, why am I here? We've got this idea that resilience is I get knocked down 7 and I get up 8. That's a stupid thing to do.
That's one piece. It is one piece. You know,
But
there's one.
it's a stupid thing to do. Like, if you get knocked down, stay down. Work out why you're on your ass.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
Right? But people like you and I, and where we come from, we go, oh, well, I'm great. I'm coming back. So you start climbing again, you fall off on your ass again, as opposed to stopping and going, hold on. This has
Well, I mean,
reason and
that's the
purpose.
thing too, right? So in the source code, right, the why of the why. So there's this architect, the DNA, the building blocks of like our belief and our behavior.
Yep.
So that to me is also this schism of the surface beliefs and the deeper codes where, like you said, sometimes you got to knock off your ass or look at yourself in the mirror or have a dark night of the soul or insert thing X, but meaning primal, visceral, scary, no more lies to yourself, the deeper code rather than the surface beliefs and behaviors. And I think that's what people, the surface beliefs and the behaviors are the smile, the fake smiles you were doing in the first few nights out. The surface behavior
Mhm.
is the fact that you got up and went out, even though your jaws wired shut, right? And it looks like, look at Dove, he's back in the world, he's back out with his mates. But underneath, until that one moment right before you came in, nothing was actually shifted, right? Is that because I think
And that's exactly it. But even in that moment of being in the club, I'm feeling like I'm real. This is the trap.
mm,
Is the Maya, the illusion is as real as it can be until it's not,
well,
until that awakening. And so many of my clients are people who have done 20 years of therapy. They've been to every Tony Robbins program. They've been to Fiji twice. They've done all these things. They're all, oh yeah, I know, I understand it. No, you've reframed shit.
yeah,
You've reframed the stuff at the top. And that's not how your emotional source code is, because at the top is your behavior. And you go, oh, my behavior kind of sucks and I need to change it. Great. What are you going to do? Well, can you help me? Sure. So I help you, give you a new behavior. Oh, well, it didn't stick. Why not? Well, because you've not looked at the beliefs and values. Oh, can you do beliefs work? Yeah. But if you do beliefs work without values, it won't stick. Oh, okay. So we do the beliefs work and do the values, right? And you go, well, why didn't that stick? Because your values are based on your identity.
yeah.
And you ain't giving that shit up unless you get bonked on the head. So now you don't have to get bonked on the head, but
That's
you
right.
can actually look at that and go, okay, what about this identity? Because everybody's identity, not yours, not mine, all of us, we built our identity for one simple reason: to survive the environment we were born into.
To survive the environment.
That's it. That's it. Now, I'm not saying your parents were terrible people or they were great people. What I'm saying is they were human and they were flawed. And as a result, you couldn't get all your needs met. So you had to work out how to survive. So, in the base of your emotional source code, what comes after that is called the anatomy of meaning. You give meaning to things in order to survive. Oh, so this means that. And if I do that, I'll be all right. And with that, we take on roles. That's part of the family understanding. We get these roles. I'm the artist. No, well, I'm the scientist.
Right.
No, those roles are not true, but we take them on. Or I'm the caretaker. I'm the one who's a good boy, or I'm the bad boy, whatever it might be. And we build that identity based on how to survive the mechanism. Now we only build beliefs and values on top of the identity. And if you want to come along and change the beliefs, and I'm not giving up my identity, bugger off. Well, hold
Yeah.
on a second. If we don't do that, there actually is no enlightenment. There's just been a new paint job. That's
Yeah,
all. It's just a paint
that's
job.
the surface. And then the other thing, like you said too, is that some of those even functional behavior, skill sets, attributes, whatever you want to call them, the Swiss Army knife of how we all maneuver for our own self in our own life. At different life stages, things that were potentially benevolent skills or traits become essentially crutches or our own weaknesses or what have you. Like essentially that over time, especially if you come from, like you were saying, whether there's, let's just say, maybe the not most stable environment, if there is violence, if there's abuse, if there are real general threats and you're on high alert, that hypervigilance enabled you to maneuver and survive that environment. But then fast forward, and that's why I say this because, I also work sometimes, with military or professional athletes or people who have to live in one kind of world, whatever this reality is, with those rules. Most of us have to still deal with Newtonian physics, and that's probably the only thing we have in common, right? And then the
Mhm.
other side of themselves, they're supposed to be a loving parent or spouse, and it's hard to code shift from this world to the other. Especially, I noticed that a lot. Kind of the near, so the. By the way, putting this in the interview as a joke, sort of not. In the trip to Antarctica that I did, there was a lot of people who had had death experiences, and on that trip was also, a lot of scientists exploring consciousness. Obviously, Deepak was on the boat right before us, and this was the boat with the Stamets and the researchers. And, a lot of people wanted to talk about NDEs. And one of the other people who sort of was an outlier to the group was Chelsea Handler, the comedian, also Jersey native gal.
Mhm.
She was sort of perplexed a little bit about, and I happened to be on the plane with her and quite a bit in her face, whether she was very gracious about it. And I was really having a struggle. Like I flew down in the neck brace. I still had a thing on my arm. I was much more dysregulated. I can, hadn't really been doing interviews or anything yet because I was afraid that I would either blank out or, I mean, it's brain injury. So I'm still
Sure.
piloting this self. But she was kind of like, "You don't do the drugs?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "So what? Like, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, to me, the death experience and that place for whatever or experience that I had, which was like you multiple times in life because I didn't take the lesson every time. Um,
We're a bit thick. We're a bit thick.
a little bit. But to me, that, like you said, exploring deep meditation practices and what I had, because I've still not done the medical dose of psychedelics, but I advocate for it. But everything that I had read and talked about and reading the research and working with Chopra Institute, my friend who was the head of the research institute there with Deepak, being enmeshed in what like you said, not what is, but what people that I admire and respect with the right intention have been trying to explore and help us understand was a lot of similarities between what was described in psychedelic journeys, death experiences, deep meditation work, and even concussion and medical coma. And I was like, so I just want to find the common thread because how do you function? Like, how do you come back to put your left hand in, you put your left hand out? Like, it's a lot. And I don't want to be medicated at all times. I don't judge people who do, but for me, I wanted to be able to, like, how do I deal with this? Like, do I bother brushing my teeth because we can manifest anything? Do I bother work, those kinds of things? And it's really a disequilibrium of self, soul, and all of that happens. And then you're trying to write it. And a lot of people, that's why they actually turn to more coping mechanisms with sex, drugs, alcohol, name your poison, whatever, food.
Mhm.
Because once you start to open yourself up to, and that's what I wanted to lean in to ask about. So now we start this base, like there's more, you can do more and exist at a deeper level with purpose and have the impossible be the impossible. And then it's like, yeah, but do I still have to do my taxes? Do I still have to do, you know what I mean? Like, how do you get that momentum for the infinite when the sort of banal is still in your purview? How do you maneuver that? And what advice do you give to people about that kind of, what I'm trying to say, that the chasm is there and yet there's kind of, stuff you have to do to get by, the life tax stuff, if you will.
Yeah, I think that, for me at least, in my work, what I find is that there has to be a period between doing and doing. And I think a lot of people have they're very functional, very successful, whatever it might be. Then they have the event, whatever the event is, the heart attack, etc. And they want to start doing again. They go, how do I get back? And again, I keep telling them, Humpty Dumpty fell, don't glue him back together, make scrambled eggs. Right? It's You're not supposed to get back. And but because we're, people like me and you and the people I work with are very successful and very driven, and that's part of our identity.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so one of the things I start with is this: hold on a second, where did you learn this?
Mm.
Like, if you grew up in my house, I was the eldest of a bunch of kids, right? My dad pissed off when I was 7. My stepdad was a pedophile. Um, my mother that probably was bipolar. Um, so I learned to be the good kid. I learned to have great intuition. I knew what the mood was as I put the key in the door. Before I'd even opened the door, I knew what mood I had to be in order to work with that environment, right? Well, what has that given me? It's given me phenomenal intuition, right? It's hypervigilance is what it actually is, but it looks like intuition, right?
Mm.
Those mechanisms for survival, I've learned to turn them into tools. Now, before, when they were unconscious, they were still the same tools, but they were driving me to constantly get the approval of the person who's become my parent. And that person might be an audience of 10,000 people I'm speaking to, that
Right.
audience might be a single individual. That's all gone now because now they're tools in a toolbox. And this is what's understanding. And that's why your point is so important, Natasha. What you learned to do to survive, that's not bad. That's amazing. It's amazing because you survived. You are the walking, talking, living evidence that it works. The challenge is you're still operating like you're under threat. And so now the examination is, well, if I'm not under threat, what would I choose? What would be the tool? So instead of like, I've just got to get up and I got to get going again. No, you don't. You need to stop. You need to pause and say, where am I holding the threat that doesn't exist? Because if I can recognize where I'm holding the threat that doesn't exist, then I can recognize the tools I'm using to deal with the threat that doesn't exist. And then I don't need that tool, or there's a better application for that tool because not every thing that's sticking out needs a hammer, right? And so, but if that's what you've learned, it's what you've learned. It's not bad, and it's worked out very good in the quote results world. But the internal level of fulfillment, there's still a hole in the soul.
Yeah.
And in a capitalistic, egocentric world which we live in, everything's based on that. So we say, well, this is, we think that, oh, we have all these moral arguments about how, people in communist countries are under authoritarian leaderships and we have democracy and it's more moral. No, it's not. That's bullshit. Nothing more moral about it whatsoever. That's nonsense. Capitalism is opportunistic. If you don't believe me, listen to Carney's talk at Davos this year, where he talked about the system was always corrupt. I'm not saying
Yeah.
what he was offering was better, so don't get me wrong, but it was always corrupt.
Yeah.
It was always corrupt, and that's fine, but don't stand on some moral ground. And this is what a lot of people do. Well, I did Tony Robbins and I went to Fiji, so I can stand on this moral high ground. No, you can't. Or I work with Dov Baron, so I can stand on this moral ground. No, you can't. The moral high ground you stand on is the breath you take in this moment.
Mm.
Can I show up for you? Can I be present with you? One of the things I tell my clients, like people say, oh, how do I work with you? I say, it's really simple. We have a process of application and you go through that process, including me meeting with you. And they go, okay. And then I say, and then do it. Can I write the check and do it? And I go, no, you got to qualify. There's a qualification process. They go, well, if I write you the check now, is that okay? No.
And that
You have
they won't seem to understand what you really do maybe in that moment
Well,
because isn't
they don't, and
that
then they say to me, "Well, what does it take?" And I go, "It takes everything I'm gonna do in the application process. I'm trying to find out what's going on underneath." But I said, "But ultimately, it's this." And they go, "What?" I have to know that I can fall in love with you. If I don't know that I can fall in love with you, we're not working together. And they go, "What do you mean?" Like, that's creepy. And I go, "No, it's nothing romantic. It's I've got to because I know there's going to come a point in our journey where you are going to want to go back to your old ways. You're going to want to go back to your survival mechanism because they worked well. And now you're not feeling as shitty. You're going, well, now I can pick up my old tools again. No, that's a loop. And I'm going to have to fight you for your soul. I'm going to have to fight for your soul while you're fighting for your ego, while you're fighting for your externalization. I'm going to fight for your soul. And I can't do that if I don't love you.
Yeah.
So I got to love you enough to fight the identity to come back to the soul so that you can have a rich, fulfilling life. So every interaction is juicy and fulfilling, and you're touching lives at a soulful level, including your own. Again, we're talking about love in a different way.
Oh, yeah. That's a big one because you sit across from people that the world envies. Let's just name it what it is, right? So without naming any names, of
Of
course, like
course.
we talked about, was there ever, a high well, I know this, but I'm saying this because we're in an interview, but
Sure.
can you talk about a time, maybe an example or two about someone that, again, without saying who they are, but give a little context to the gravitas, right?
Yeah.
Such that that schism between that success and confidence and clarity, and that maybe if there's an example that stayed with you because it actually it changed or shifted perhaps some of what you felt about what is ambition or ego or identity motivation, like where you were like, wow, this guy or this lady, like one of those. I'd love one of those.
Well, I'll give you
That still
two.
echoes,
I'll
that's
give you two, one from one side, one from the other.
rock on.
So it was a guy who was recommended to me by a client I've been working with for 10 years. Um, and he said, "This guy really needs you. I just don't know if you'll work with him." I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you want to give me any background on him?" And he goes, "No, except that he is an immigrant and he's got an immigrant mentality." And I said, "Okay." And he lives in,
Everything immigrant mentality, for those who don't know, I don't know if I'm capturing it, but since we didn't discuss it, on my team, we say everything is 10 things, meaning like we don't just do one thing for nothing. Nothing is ever wasted.
right,
Push, 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 right? It's
right.
more, 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 more. Don't be lazy.
And
And
there's always something to
if you
prove.
have something to
And
prove,
there's,
as well
yeah,
as some, but not others. And ours was also, but if you have extra, share.
exactly. Right. So I was like, okay, no problem. So I set up a meeting and I have the meeting with the guy. It's the initial conversation, and he's paid for an hour, right? Because you have to pay for the hour, right? I'm not giving you that. You have to pay for that hour. So he pays for the hour. And at about 40 minutes in, I go, "We're done." And he goes, "But my hour's not up." And I go, "I know." He goes, "I paid for an hour." I go, "I know. We can sit here if you like and talk about shoes or the weather or whatever you want, but
I'm
we're
sorry to laugh.
done."
I'm sorry.
And he says, "Why?" I said, "Because we're not going to be working together." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "You can't afford me." And he goes, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, "No, not really. I mean, you've not really told me." And he goes, "Well, do you know how much money I have?" And I said, "I'm going to guess." I said, "You're in the billion class." And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, he said, "Do you know anything else?" And I go, "Well, let me tell you what I'm making up." Right. And he goes, "Oh, okay." I said, "You live in West Vancouver." Now I live in Vancouver, Canada. West Vancouver is the highest priced properties in Canada. Right. It's on the
Just
side of the mountain.
a little spot. Yeah, got
Yeah, little spot. Looking over the city, over the ocean, it's magnificent. I said, "You live in West Van?" And he goes, "Yes." I said, "You drive either the very top end of a Mercedes, but probably Maybach." And he went, "I drive a Mercedes, blah, 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 whatever it is." And I said, "Oh." And he goes, "Yeah, you're pretty good at this." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "And now do you want to know about your house?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "You live," I said, "I can't tell you the exact part of West Van you live in, but what I will tell you is to get to your house, you have to drive up past it and then come down into it." And he went, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, your driveway, you have to come down from the side of the mountain into the house. You have to drop into it." And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, and I said, "And the top level is like a showroom." And he's like, I said, "But however, you and your family and probably your wife's family or your family all live downstairs. And some of the furniture down there is secondhand, even though you could clearly afford other stuff." And he's like, "How do you know all this?" I said, "Because I know exactly who you are. You can't afford me." And he goes, "Why do you keep saying that?" I said, "Because you know the price of everything and the value of nothing. I are only working with your soul. And if you don't value that, there's nothing I can do."
Yeah.
Now everybody else asks me, "Well, did he then turn around?" And I'm like, "No, no, he didn't."
He's probably
And
like
that's okay. I'm
you.
good with that.
Did he
It's
under
okay.
do you think he really knew what you meant? Like, do you feel it or no?
I think he knew, judging by watching him, think he knew exactly what I meant. But I also think he was never going to go there. It would have been a battle for me, and I'm not interested in battling. I mean, I don't mind the battles that are needed, but I'm
Right,
not interested in battling from day one, moment one, all the way through. Like, what's the point of that?
right.
There's no point of that. Um, and another example was somebody who is still pretty well known, famous, who was an individual who everything looked right, everything looked great, um, and I by accident met his mom. I met his mom at another friend of mine's event. My friend had invited me to come to his event. I went to his event, and his mom was a participant. She was taking the training, right? And he said, "Oh, that's this person's mom." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. All right." And she came up to ask a question, And my friend said, I'm going to let Dov answer this because I'm sitting with him, although he's leading, right? And he says, I'm going to let Dov answer this. And so I answered it. And she went, oh, my son needs to talk to you. And I said, yeah, I can see that. She goes, you know my son? And I go, no, not personally, but I know. I said, I know things about people they don't know I know before I ever meet them. And she goes, okay. So I write it off. I was like, okay, that's not going anywhere because this happens all the time, right? Oh, I know who needs you, but they never, okay. So this person ends up sending me an email, which ends up in my spam because, of course, right? So 3 weeks go by, right? And the mom writes to me and says, and hers doesn't go in spam. My son wrote to you. He never heard back. And I go, I never got anything from him. Hold on, I'll check my spam, which I thought we checked, but we hadn't. And there's his email. So I contact him, and his resistance is, well, my mom told me this. It's, I don't do what my mother says. I'm a grown man. Yeah, I understand. Oh, I get it, right? And then we begin to build rapport around some things that are really important to him. And I begin to ask him, what will happen to your work if you don't do this? If you don't go on this journey of your soul, if you don't face the dark night of the soul, if you don't become the phoenix that rises, because I know on the outside what it all looks like. And I said, but I can also tell you what's going on inside. And he says, okay, tell me. And it always looks like I'm being psychic, but I'm not. So I'm just, okay, because I'm reading the field. I'm reading the psychic field, yes, but it's not that. I'm also reading the behaviors that are showing me what's going on in the emotional source code.
Yes,
And
and
so
and there's a resonance, right?
there's
There's
a resonance, right?
resonance you can
Empathetic
feel,
resonance is there, and because of my background, I can read that well.
right? So, and I think that's what we all, the NDE club, that's what we, one
Right,
of our gifts
right.
that we get.
So I said, what will, and so he got it. And I said, but I'm not going to say yes to you. And he said, why? I said, because you're not in enough pain yet. And he goes, well, I don't want to wait for it to get terrible. And I said, no, I know, but I can feel that you're not really ready to jump into this, to step in. I understand that, and I'm not judging you for it. I said, so I'm going to give you 6 months and come back to me. So he goes, okay. So we have a nice conversation. We finish up the rest of the conversation. We talk about his work and what he's done and what I know and blah, blah, blah. It's cool. 2 weeks later, he's like, fuck, this happened. And he tells me what happened. How do we start? Then I could get, okay, now we can see the potential loss of something that matters more than fame or accolades or money or whatever it is. We start working together. Completely transforms not only his style of what he does, but now how he's approaching it and who he's willing to work with. And now he's saying, oh, no, that's a great offer with a terrible back end, meaning not as in financial back end, but like who I have to sit in the shadow of. I don't want that. I don't want that stink on me. I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to expose that. I was like, okay, we have to do this very carefully, and you have to dance around that a little bit because that will come, but we got to wait till you are so rock solid in this. That's 2 years ago. His life was dramatically different. He's now actually married, which he wasn't at the time, to the person he was dating, who he was treating terribly
But
because
not
she was
aware
good.
of it, but
Yeah,
not
it
aware.
was no, because he was not aware of it because he was treating her poorly because uh, she was treating him well, and he didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah,
It's like you've got to be after something
yeah,
because that was part of his experience, particularly being in the world that he's in. That you know, and you and I both know this. The rarest commodity of wealth and power is truth. The more wealth and power you have, the further you are from truth, because everybody's invested. So if I make less than you and you are my boss and I piss you off, well, That can affect my mortgage payment. That can affect whether I can send my kids to private school. So I'm going to smooth the edges of that. It's like, I don't know if you watch the show Succession, but Succession, like, nobody ever tells the truth
Yeah.
because everybody's dancing around their own emotional investment in their financial situation.
I think that's how I accidentally wound up with a lot of celebrity life, right? Like, will you help me with my story, with my that? And I said, I don't know Hollywood anything. I don't know any of that. And I'm not even the best writer. And they were like, yeah, but I trust you. And I like the way
That's it.
you treat me like a human being, which you said, love the dictate. And I'm not putting the judgment. It's not for me to judge. I'm not saying if this crime was bad, that's not for me. I'm just saying this is what's before me and how I can express it from my lens. And that's all I can do. Like you said, that's it. But it shocked me because these are people that pay, like they pay still those staff people like lawyers and what have you and agents and what have you, but they have a whole wave of not trusting anyone. And the other thing around how I would get these sort of, like you said, confessions, admissions, and I'm not even set up to be servicing in that way as you. And I'm like,
Right.
why am I the person you're telling? And I think it's that I try to come with that open, non-judgmental, but authentic, like you're gonna see me go, "Ooh, ooh, that's a thing." You know what I mean? Like, I can't
Right.
pretend as well. I don't know if that's a spectrum thing. I'm good at it, but not always. And I also might accidentally, say something where other people would be like, "You can't say that." I'm like, "Why
Yeah.
not?" And that's sort of the Eastern European culture thing. I'm like, "Why? I thought it was silly," and so I said it was silly.
Right.
They're like, no, you have to say it's great, whatever it is. And I would be like the emperor's naked, which, like you said, is sort of figuring out how to do that tactfully and appropriately.
It is a dance, and it's learning how to do it. I mean, I can remember another example of a very a big family of multi-generational wealth in Australia, and the lady I was working with, um, we were, I think, on our second meeting after she became a client.
Mhm.
So my clients fly in, they spend some time with us here, and then I work with them for a year. And so it was a second meeting after this, right? And so I asked her about something, and she was telling me, and I just said, "Hold on a sec, just pause. You've spent 24 hours straight with me, up in person. I'm direct with you." And she goes, "Yeah, and I appreciate that." And I said, "Okay." I said, "What you just told me," I said, "Do you want to think about that?" And she says, "Okay." And so she's thinking, and she says, "I don't get it." And I said, "You do know you're full of shit, right?" And she says, "How dare you?" And I said, "How dare I what?" She goes, "Nobody speaks to me like that." And I said, "That's the freaking problem. Nobody does." And she starts to laugh and she goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot." She'd been with me like less than a month before. Right? And it's like, no, like, how do you get to the truth? It's the thing that people are so hungry for. This is why people talk about it being lonely at the top, because nobody tells you the bloody truth. Everybody's got something invested in there. Oh, well, if I tell you that, I could lose this. Well, all right, you're not getting the truth. Well, you're going to get the truth. I'm going to ask you, not because I want to find a gotcha moment, but because I want to actually help you understand what drove you to this. The people are being, all the stuff that's coming up with the Epstein files, and people being questioned, like, fucking just tell the truth, right? You can be on the Epstein list and have done nothing, right? Jon Stewart's on the list because somebody sent an email saying Jon Stewart should host this and this and this, and that email was sent to Epstein. Your name can be in there and you could have done nothing. Now your name could be in there and you could have done something. I don't know. I'm not here to judge it because I don't have the context. But whatever it is, you show up and you go, "Hey, here's what happened." Because if I said years, like back in the 90s, I said, no, early 2000s, I said, if I'm on 60 Minutes and Barbara Wawa is interviewing me, right? And she goes, "Dov, you talk about this enlightenment and understanding and spiritual understanding and depth of emotional being and connectedness and living a life on purpose. But didn't you do some drugs, some cocaine in the 90s?" My answer would be, "Yeah, I did."
Oh,
And
I say
she'd go,
that
"Do you
too.
have
I'm
anything
not
to say
proud to
about
say
that?"
this, but everyone's like, "You're so nice." I was like, "No, I'm an asshole too." I'm not proud.
Exactly. It's like, because I'm
Everyone's the
human, I
villain in
tried
someone's
things.
story. Everyone's the villain in someone's story. Everyone's been many things to many people. And so I think truth is a big one. And the other one I wanted to ask you about, if I may, is fear. So, right? So, I mean, these are corners. I mean, I know it's tropes, but forgive me because we got to find the hook in, right? So, truth within yourself and to
Mhm,
others, and
mhm,
especially the more up you go in sort of certain measures of success, or quite frankly even the just the volume of people that you might be influencing in your wake. Now, fear. So can
mhm,
you share, just because of, again, the kaleidoscope of adventures you've had and the kind of clients you've had, it is a curious topic, and then because I also work with some high profile individuals, men and women, but
mhm.
a little bit more on men, it seems to be the secret, right? Is
Right.
the fears and the reoccurring fears that maybe, I mean, honestly, this sounds like BuzzFeed, but what are some of the fears? I'm like, what are some of the reoccurring fears from people who seem to have won the game and seem to appear fearless? Because I remember, I'll give you a silly example, but it was, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but some of my accidents required quite a bit of bib rest. And eventually you're like, okay, I just want TV.
Mhm,
And I was watching a comedian in cars with coffee and cars or something. And it was Seinfeld and Eddie Murphy. And it was Eddie Murphy talking about how he still had like almost crippling stage fright, and I
mhm,
remember being like, "What?" And I it surprised me. And I, of
mhm.
course, I'm like, "Of course, he's a human," and but he talked about it and also what he did and how he, got through it. But anyway, so something like that. And are there ones that sort of stand out as sort of very common and that you're like, "Yep, yep," or that the person thinks like, "You're never gonna believe, but actually I'm afraid of whatever." I don't know, but I was just curious about your thoughts on that because it does seem like people often would say to me about being brave, and I'm like, being brave, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't think I'm even doing it right, and I'm just literally just making it up as I go along, and I feel terrible and scared all the time. What are you talking about, brave? So I was curious, what you see from people, and especially those who seem to kind of project a fearlessness.
So I think the number one fear of anybody who has achieved anything beyond what was perceived by them as being possible,
Mm,
right? Number one fear is the fear of loss. What if I lose this? So, what if I do this work, Dov, and I lose my edge? What if I get sober and I'm no longer funny,
that
right?
that's a big
Yeah,
one.
right. So, what if I stop doing the drugs and I'm not creative anymore? Right?
Right.
It's the fear of loss of the thing that got me here. And this is why I said, I tell my people it's very simple. You have already encoded the pathways to the success. It's just that the things you're adding into it don't work, right? And that's what strips it of its value, right? So you've already learned all the mechanisms for being a multi best-selling author or a famous guru of X or Y, or you know that you know how to do that, right? So that we're not going to try and take that away. That's already encoded. So you're not going to lose it. You're going to lose some footing in it for a little while you reorient yourself. But that's all. That path is always going to be there. Now it's just fueled by something else. And I think that that's the number one fear is if I give up this, will I also lose that? That's the number one fear of these high performing people, the people who perform at the highest level. And it's of course it's not true. You're not going to lose it, but it is. That's the number one fear. And what I know about fear is this: is the number one. It steals one thing: curiosity. You cannot live in fear and be curious. And curiosity is my religion. And I think it's the thing that's kept me going all the years. And I've been fearful, but I have to get curious. People say, be brave. Fuck that. I don't even know what that means.
That's kind of what I was saying, but
Like,
you said it
what,
way cooler.
like, what does that mean? Be brave, right? It's
That's
like
what I was
love.
saying. I was like, brave. I don't know. I just
I don't know what
but
that means,
curious
right?
is like I love that too because curious or curious. So I do have a lot of Lewis Carrollisms that came up, especially with, when you're sort of half in consciousness and not, and then the six impossible things before breakfast, and even around science and curiosity. I use that a lot and I never tied them together with fear. So yeah, I'm gonna steal all of this. Is amazing. And I love that you also said you might lose a little footing. Some of your things that you say as a side comment, I'm repeating on purpose because It's the platitudes that also get people to just be like, yeah, there's that lady who fell, but she still has her hair nice, and here he is, and isn't it nice for them to say all these things? And we're like, no, 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 there's messy, horrible stumbles along the way.
Oh my God.
Also,
Yeah.
the recalibration isn't in one go. I mean, I'm just reiterating that. I think that's the problem, especially a huge sweeping platitude. But I say this because I kind of sit intersectionally between I'm Gen X and Boomer and above, and then younger folks who like all their life is on camera and curated and privacy. And we did stupid stuff and nobody knew. Whoever was there knew or saw you like say the dumb thing or ask the girl out or try that trick and fall on your butt or whatever it is, right? And we could kind of lick our wounds in private a little more. And then, now everything is, like you said, for display. And they don't seem to have that resilience of like, okay, I'll just pivot and do that in that same way because that scaffolding wasn't there. Everything was already on display. And I really love the fact that you said curiosity is sort of the anecdote to it. And I think I realized I resonated with that. I hadn't thought of it that way. So I'm like, oh, I really, really would love to continue that idea because curiosity is exciting and sexy and alluring, and it's the lead, it's the carrot, not the stick. And
The interesting thing about curiosity for me, I mean, when people talk about brave, like we talked about before, and I say courage plus curiosity equals love,
mm,
right? Because if you ever fell in love and found yourself no longer in love, you stopped being curious. I'm still with my wife because I'm still incredibly curious about who she is, right? And I get bored with people pretty damn fast, right? So particularly in an intimate relationship, I'm still curious about she is. She's still surprised me, and I love that she's still curious about me, and I love that we don't agree about everything, right? There's that curiosity is a powerful force in our world, but to come back to what you're talking about Gen Z and what will be Alpha generation, we also have to understand that as human beings, we are tribal. We need to belong. My latest book is called The Art of Belonging. And we need to belong. We have this hunger to belong. We want to belong. So if you embarrass the shit out of yourself in front of 4 or 5 or 6 people, you can get away from those people. But if you embarrass yourself in front of 1 million people or even 1,000 people online, it feels like it's impossible to get from under. And so as a result, that represses the courage. It represses the curiosity. It puts all those things away. And it's interesting to see now that the influencers who are becoming more popular are the ones who are saying, they're showing up with messy hair. They're showing up in their very unprocured state and saying, here's my screw up. I just saw one this morning as a guy I listened to, and he wrote a book about cults. And as you know, I studied cult psychology. And so I listened to him, right? And he goes, I just wanted you to know that I'm an expert in cults, and I got scammed, and I got scammed on this product, and I bought it from this thing, and it was backed by this person, and it was a complete scam. And he goes, because it can happen to anybody. And I went, yeah, that is beautiful. But guess what? He's older than 50, right? That's needed. Giving ourselves permission to be flawed rather than procured is so vital for us. Like to show up, like my son is married now, or well, actually both my sons and my daughter are married, but one of my sons who's married, they've been together quite a long time now. They have a couple of kids. But I can remember when they first were dating and she kind of moved in, and he would go to the gas station for a shit because he didn't want to leave the stink in the house. And he is the
that, and that's why she married him. No, I'm kidding.
but the interesting thing is that he's famously gassy. Like we're always talking about Michael's farts because he farts all the time, right?
Sorry,
And
Michael.
but,
Luckily, I don't have a big audience.
no, but he's fine with it, right? But he wasn't willing
That's
to
his
do that.
power. That's
He
his
wasn't
power.
willing to do that in front of her,
Right, right.
right? And then the edge comes off and you start to be more and more real. And I'm really glad that he allowed that to become part of this is who he is. And is it
I
great?
love that that's your example.
But that's the point. It's like
Yeah.
are we willing to be human, right? I
Oh,
don't wake up looking like this. You don't wake up looking like that. At my age, I wake up and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I got to get up 2 hours earlier for my face to wake up, right?
mhm.
Because if I'm going to be on camera, the face I wake up with is not the face I'm going to have in 2 hours. I know that. So I need a little bit of moisturizer, a little bit of, I've got to do some things to make things look a bit better. That's fine. But I also would go, oh, okay, I'll jump on.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, my producer backstage will vouch. I'll do that actually because I'm not really a media person. I'm a science person playing media person. So I'm like, okay, lipstick. Okay, good. But I will say I don't really want to talk about this, but you make me want to, and it's embarrassing. So I figure I'm gonna put out one of mine, but it's not about the toilet, but it's close. It's that when I this trip that I was talking about, I was so excited about it
Mhm.
before my injury, about who I was gonna be with, who I was gonna get to be trapped on a boat with, the Mr. Founder of mycology, Paul Stamets, and his partner Pam, like people that I admired, reveres, Rachel Yehuda, like people who, and I'm not trying to name drop, I'm saying like for me, some people don't have any
Sure.
idea who these people are. For me, they were like my heroes are all gonna be trapped on a boat with me for a week. And I was the worst like I was so dysregulated on so many levels. Now, some people were luckily my friends, including the person who I met through you, Ellen Ito, the CEO of Interstill. And I heard medical technology, the vagus nerve devices, had been helping me with my actual ability to speak and do brain function after the event. So we brought like devices on the boat. So I was sort of like, we're scientists doing things, but I was a mess. I literally couldn't find my voice from like, do I have an accent? Do I have this voice? I was still figuring out. My languages were still blocked. Speak several languages, and until we were like in Buenos Aires, I heard Ellen actually talking about this on Friday. She's like, we started out and she was like, yo, hablo. And she's like, and then all of a sudden the switch went and I was like, quiero, and then it was just flowing. And so that was happening in front of people in real time. And I would be frenetic and I would like
Mhm.
say the wrong thing. And I could feel that I was off. I could feel like I was the kind of, sorry, like cliched of like Asperger's y, like I couldn't regulate into the conversation at times. People were nice about it. Other times I'd be great, but I was embarrassed, and a few times I was like, "Well, this is humiliating in front of the people I admire." And I have to say, people were very kind. Some people I definitely felt were like, "What are you?" And then other people weren't, and it was really awful. It was awful to feel like I am generally socially well integrated, and I had become this childhood version of an weird kid, and
Mhm.
yet dealing with that in front of my heroes. And I was
Mhm.
like, and then I was like, wait, and I'm trapped with them, so I can't run away. Like that thing I thought would be so great. I was like, oh no. And then it was on the last day when I felt this lightening and clearing of whatever this was. And I was like, "Oh," and the people I saw on the last day were the people who I already know and were like, "Okay, we know you're okay." But like you said, it's humbling at any time, even if you're generally sort of self-actualized, or if you generally feel like the social part of you, if that's your thing, is pretty well in tuned. Everything comes back around to re-examine whenever you have those shifts, like you say, fall off the mountain, divorce, accident, breakup, company explodes, whatever, right? And that uh, w
The question that is important is who are you left with when everything's gone,
yeah, do you
right?
like that person?
Right.
Would you
Is
wanna
that
meet them? Would you
well,
wanna be
that's it.
friends with
Is
them?
that somebody you would wanna hang out with,
That's exactly where I
right?
was going,
When
right?
everything's gone? Because if the person you're gonna be when everything is gone is a miserable sod who never who's a victim, you
Yeah,
probably wouldn't wanna hang out with them. Now, if they're in grief and they can be in their grief and saying, "This is what I'm feeling, and it's kinda shitty. I know it's not permanent, but I'm here and I'm gonna be with it because the more I'm with it, the faster it will go. I'm gonna sit here in to use Bly's words, I'm gonna sit in the ashes. I'm gonna be with this." Well, it's like, "Oh, I can sit with you. I can be with you. I wanna be with you." That's very different than a victim story, right? And so it's very important to ask that question you just said, which is, who are you when everything is gone? Who are you when all the accolades have been stripped away? And is that a person you would want to be with?
and if not, like, okay, start there.
Exactly. Start there. That's not actually. If you say it's not, that doesn't make you a bad person. It's like, okay, now you have a place to jump off.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I need to. There are elements of that person that I like, but I don't want to be that person. Like when I wept on that floor, I had to realize there were many things about my previous life that I really liked, and I didn't want to let them go. But there were things about my life that I liked that were damaging me,
Yeah.
and I had to let
And
those go.
people too, that's another
Oh,
thing.
absolutely.
We were talking about people, whether it's corporate shift or sobriety or right or a mental health time or that where the people and things that were part of that first chapter or first few sets of chapters might get pulled away, ripped away, or cut off. And that's another part that we don't talk about.
I
I
think that's
see
part
it.
of the challenge, though, don't you, Natasha? I mean, because when I meet somebody who says, "Oh, we've been friends," this is Charlie or Susie or whoever it is,
Right,
and we've been friends since
great.
kindergarten. And I'm like, "Ooh, and they're like, "What do you mean? Isn't that good?" I'm like, "I don't know. It makes me nervous." And they go, "Why?" I go, "Well, what do you talk about?" Because most people have been friends for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or since high school. Talk about high school. They talk about the person who was there at high school that they used to play football with, and they're still showing off their football ring. I'm like, you're 50 and you're fat, so stop talking about how you won the championship. Like that's not who you are. Like you're something else. Like where is
Well,
your
even more than
gravitas
that, I would
now?
say, like, I'd say so working with, like, law enforcement and military, sometimes I would see that it also kinda keeps you stuck in those loops, right? So that's why they don't process trauma. So I'm overgeneralizing, forgive
Of
me,
course,
my
I
world.
understand.
No, my disclaimers is to, like, a medical community, but that they're part of the challenge is that spiraling in that in the Alice in Wonderland, running around in a circle. So whether you're still talking about the football ring or you're still talking about that whatever over beers in the same way, in the same with the same people, with the same conclusions that you're all echo chambering each other. And that's another thing that because if you're not a CEO, if you're not a billionaire living in the best neighborhood in Canada, what do you do with what Dove is saying, right? So I want to also break down this to really, really basic levels,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we talked about being honest with yourself and the world around you in an uncomfortable way, but to
Hmm.
find that better part of would you be friends with yourself? And look at
Right.
that. And that can come down to how you treat the service person at the gas station and in the restaurant and the garbage that's in your hand. I mean, nobody's looking, but those are still part of you and your actions and what you're doing. And I'm not trying to say we should all be Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts only in that, but just to challenge people to think about that you when no one's looking, that you when you look within yourself on why are you motivated? What are you doing this for? Now, at the same time, people will say, like you said, well, that's very well for you to say because you have a home and it's not being repossessed. Or we make these choices because we're hand to mouth. And I would argue that both of us have been fortunate to have been around the world and seen people of all different socioeconomic status, right? I'm going to assume this, right, from
Hmm.
knowing a little bit.
Right.
Such that we've seen people maybe in the East, maybe in South America and South Africa and different places where they had very little according to our standards of wealth, meaning they might
Yes.
not have even shoes.
Hmm.
And yet
Absolutely.
they can be smiling and be so some of the newer focus on the blue zones and longevity, not for the right reasons, but people are starting to realize this and having shocks. I hear people say, can you believe this guy, he was so poor and he was happy. And the fact that there is that external internal, and I think that's why everything that you do transcends all of the layers around basically, sorry, what we would think of as like you mentioned, all respect to Tony Robbins, but meaning someone who's a coach for people who are trying to just up level themselves. And what you sort of seem to do, and I feel like I don't know if those who weren't necessarily coming out of a Harvard Business Review of your book understand that what you're actually doing when you say wrestling with the soul, it is for anyone at any place, at any level, of any caste, of any box. And I hope that especially those folks who struggle to see their value and their purpose, and whether you're younger or you're stuck, wherever that is, that you can take a lot from these things, and they're not platitudes. And you did say, and we do stumble, and sometimes getting up isn't what you're supposed to do. In fact, I had to learn that too. I'm still learning that. Like it was I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but I feel like forget we're in an interview and we're just talking. A few times I'm like, oh, I guess I just said that. Where I had a little, it happened and my producer who was backstage, it was one of the events with them. It was a big fashion show we were doing in the Hamptons, with one of the properties that we partner with and do events at. And it was, it was a big important thing for months planned. And I couldn't drive yet at the time. Still, I had also dyslexia. It came
Mhm.
back from the head injury, so I have a little spatial, which is great. I'm like, I was Mario Andretti, now I can't drive. I'm like, oh, I can be a passenger. This is nice. I had to
You
learn
can be Miss Daisy.
Miss Daisy. And but anyway, I had pushed myself that week, and actually was the first week I had gone back to the studio, done some stuff. Um and for me, I don't know where that line is. I'm not proud of this. I'm still like, this is after the accident and after you're not supposed to do this. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I still would be pushing my physical body because I didn't really have signs that I was doing that. I was functioning.
Mhm.
And then the night before the event, I was like, we were in a different place in Atlantic City, and I had to go to the Hamptons, not too far. And I said, I think I have to go home and sleep in my bed and get up early, and we'll go in the morning. And that was not like me. And at like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I started to feel this very like I had been drugged. And I was like, I
Mm.
think I have to go to bed. Okay, okay. 7 p.m. And again, I'm still not doing everything, but I was sort of roboting through that. People didn't even really know maybe I was too hurt. I definitely still had pain and those kinds of things, but that because of the other stuff, pain is not a thing for me. I woke up in the morning of this event, and people who know me know I'm disciplined. Like if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere. And I woke up and I couldn't see, like it was black,
Wow.
and I got a little scared. And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." Okay, and I tried to get up to use the restroom, and I couldn't get up, and I was like, "Wait, maybe this is bad. Like what's going on?" And
Maybe this is
say,
bad.
I'll just
I
say,
love that you went to maybe.
maybe.
I can't see. Maybe this is bad.
I was like, "Nah, I'm sure it'll go away." Like I'm just all like, "I'm sure it'll go away." That's how I've
Right.
been a lot until the thing is going the wrong way. So needless to say, I start to trying to say like, I don't think I could go. We're gonna go late. We're gonna go late. We're gonna okay, which is already for me stress because I don't like being late for anything. Fast forward to they're all like, "Are you coming? Oh my god!" And nobody can believe like I don't just not show up, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't. So I'll just say now we're like mid morning. I'm like crying privately because I feel like I let everybody down, and I'm not there, and I'm starting to get pictures from everyone, and everyone's like, where are you? Blah, blah. And my daughters are like, I'm like, I'm just in the bed. And then I did call a friend who happens to be a neuroscience person, doctor person friend, and she said, I'm not going to say who it is, and she came and checked me out. And I was like, "What does this mean?" And she goes, "It means you gotta rest, bitch." I was like
Exactly.
I was
Yep.
like, "What?" She's like, "You're because you're still in brain injury." She's like, "You literally your body's shut down, like you ding
Yep.
dong, like you." And I knew, and I'm science trained, and I was completely denying that it was happening. My accent, the speech pattern, like I had 24 hours of like realizing and headache was coming. So now since then, that was in August, two or three times it started, but I never got that bad again. And I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, okay, I think," and I was trying to be more honest, like, "You know what? The fear of letting someone down or not doing something or not being able to procure so that we could produce to cover at a time when that matters, not just for frivolity but for base necessity, as you said, like function overhead.
Mhm.
um I'm sorry, I can't today." And I had to the for the first time a few weeks ago, and also, as a founder business person, does that mean everyone will think you're unreliable, you can't function, we shouldn't, it was really, really that dance of that, how much you reveal publicly and privately about when you need a break or can't or don't know how or whatever that means. And I think that was part of the tie up in for me, my fear that
But
like,
that's the fear of loss of identity.
mm,
See, so here's who I am. This is who I've portrayed. These are all the boxes I check every time. I always show up early, on time, whatever it might be. Check, check, check. Oh shit, my identity is now getting some cracks in it because the identity isn't real. The identity is built. Once you understand that, you go, well, what the hell is going on in this moment? Well, what's going on is my body's shutting down and it doesn't give a shit about my identity.
Yeah, and I'm not proud of this story. It's
No,
actually
but that's no,
humiliating, but I figure
but honestly, I think it's a great story. It's an important story because it personifies exactly what we've been talking about
yeah.
is that here you are, a reasonably enlightened individual who's done incredible things in the world, who's made massive shifts and massive changes and had all kinds of crazy success. You can still fall for your own uh,
Bullshit.
publicity in your head, your own yeah, bullshit, right? You
Yeah,
fall for your own bullshit. We all do, and it's really important to understand this. Like, you're still gonna go down that road. Like I said, as soon as you get a little bit well, that turn off to the left is saying, "Oh, well, let's go back to the old way."
yeah, and I totally did that, and
And you do that, and you go, "Oh, I banged into a wall. Well, what am I gonna now do now? Plow through the wall and call it resilience? That's not resilience. That's stupidity. Stop. You're on your ass. Work out why you're on your ass before you get up. Oh, I need to rest. Because my friend who's a neuroscientist just went, you need to rest, bitch. Okay, good. I need to rest, bitch.
and by the way, I never heard her talk quite like that, and I was like, "Oh, okay," and I think she wanted me to pay attention.
Of course.
Um, and And I also wanna joke and say, "Gosh, I am as much as I'm a dummy, I'm pretty smart because look at this. I got a 90-minute Dov Baron empowerment therapy session for free." Very pleased with myself as we get to the
You
end of our time. Um,
good.
I will leave us I have one last little question because you
Sure.
talked about helping, you help others essentially find their alignment to truth because we talked a lot about truth and I tried to sneak in and how do you feel about feel. But and you talked a bit about your wife and it's so beautiful, but I wonder either her or if it's outside, who do you feel like kind of and I don't mean challenge you I was going to say challenges you to stay honest, but I don't mean like you know what I mean? Like, oh, because 'cause you'll get in trouble. I just meant, like, do you ever catch yourself? Because I brought up that example. I'm not proud of it, but I'm putting it out there, warts and all, here we go. But do you ever find yourself still having that dance, resisting growth? Or, for me, sometimes it's also where, because we play a lot of roles in our home as a parent, as a grandparent. I'm not a grandparent yet, although I keep saying to my guys I'm ready, but they said, "Don't say that yet," to the girlfriend. But I'm like, "Just so you know, it's on record, I'm ready to be grandma."
Just so
Um
you know, it's the greatest thing ever.
Oh, yeah. But do you ever find yourself, do you catch yourself sort of resisting a growth moment just because, we do get sort of conditioned, into certain ways of being?
So let me put this clearly. I'm fucking human.
Oh my gosh, hold on. Really? Oh,
Yes, of course. Of course. My missus challenges me all the time. I mean, sometimes she'll say to me and I go, I can't believe I'm such a schmuck. Like I said this or did that, and or I was so unthoughtful with the person who matters most to me in my life.
mm,
You know, I'm human. I make those mistakes, and I have fortunately I have a really great peer group who I surround myself with, who are outstanding individuals. And I always say, the saying is true: if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
yeah.
And smart doesn't mean intelligence. Smart means, of course, it means intelligence, but not just intelligence. It also means, as you said, it means wisdom, and it also means honesty. Right. So I fail all the time. Uh, One of our sons has got some anxiety issues, and my wife had knee replacement surgery last September, and he didn't call. And after she got out of the hospital, and he didn't call, and it was like 3 weeks. So I called him and tore a strip off him, right? And
Those who don't know, that means chewed him out a little bit.
chewed him out, yeah. Gave him shit, all right? Gave him shit. Um, Now my enlightened self would have done a hell of a lot better job, but I wasn't very enlightened in that moment.
He
I
was
was
the
pissed
cat
off.
who knocked over the garbage in that moment because you were
Exactly. It was
feeling
just like,
protective of your
uh,
wife's heart of being, "My son didn't call me,"
right.
versus, I'm gonna guess and intimate around why he didn't call might have not been for the reasons that you thought.
Exactly, right? So I'd made up, you're just being a thoughtless little selfish shit, right? Which is pretty much what I said to him. When in truth, he was going through his own anxiety issues because he has severe anxiety. Now, from an enlightened point of view, I can understand that. I've struggled with massive anxiety. I understand that. But I was not very enlightened in that moment. I was a bully, right? And guess what? I was a bullied kid. So that defense mechanism is worked into my coconut. Like part of my system goes, oh, you win by bullying. It's a terrible win, but you win because
Yeah.
they won over me. So it's a default dark shadow mechanism inside of me. When I do it, am I proud? Hell no.
No.
Am I apologetic? Absolutely. Am I accountable? Incredibly, totally, and absolutely. There is no excuse for it. Yes, I was upset about X or Y, but I could have dealt with that in a much better way. I fail miserably all the time.
That should
And
be the
any
other club we make. The NDE, the Not Done Existing Club, and the We Fail All the Time Club.
Yeah, I'm failing constantly. You see, this is the other thing I said about enlightenment. We think about enlightenment as the bright lights and the ooh ah music and all that kind of stuff, and it's a destructive process. But it's also an ongoing process. You can be an enlightened, like I always like to say to people, I am the most enlightened idiot you'll ever meet. And they go, "What do you mean?" I go, "Because I can be an asshole, I can be a complete moron, and I can be incredibly enlightened, and it can all take place within 15 seconds.
Yeah.
All the range of that and a whole lot more because I'm human. If I got skin and I'm in a body, then I got an ego and I've got to deal with that and its mechanisms for survival that build my identity and how I interact with people. Am I proud of when it doesn't go well? No, but I can catch myself and I try and I want to say this clearly. I try to surround myself with people
Yeah.
who are honest enough to tell me.
Yeah,
That's the
that's a
difficult
really
like we
good
talked about
point, and
earlier.
I think that whether you're in sort of upper echelons of the world or you're just starting out, that's a really good simple point, and again, it's sort of look around you and who's around you. And like you said about the smartest person in the room, I've heard other adages about, how you are representative or reflective of those people and characters. So if you feel like there are people around you who are maybe more unsavory than you'd like to be, take a look at that, and that it's okay to kind of find a new path or find newer, and that's where another thing I think like younger people, it's interesting to me. It's almost like at the two bookends of our life stage societies that the, you know, 65 plus and 25 and under are struggling more with
Mhm,
the sense of who am I in relation to those around me, which is probably because the 65 plus in culture, in Western culture anyway, right? It wasn't really questioned. It was just shaped around you, right? So if you worked in this career, this is who you were with, and you went to this country club or synagogue or church or whatever, those were those people that you were with, and your life was pretty the levels of dynamicism were more limited. And you stayed in the same career for a longer period of time with the same colleagues. And so that kind of made you have, well, this is my definition of my little chessboard. Younger people are the opposite of it. At the same time, they don't seem to have real attachment style relationships, right? So it's really interesting to me how we kind of sit in the middle of all of this. And like you said, I love what you said there about messing up all the time. Thank you for that. At the very, very end, if the world stopped calling tomorrow and the stages went quiet, we started with this and the titles all disappeared. What do you think would make your work, the most meaningful to you? If you were just, Grandpa Dove, sitting on
uh,
the porch in Canada.
G-Dad.
G-Dad.
My grandkids call me G-Dad.
G-Dad with a capital
Yeah,
G.
yeah, G-Dad. Um, you know, my life's purpose is long, but part of the statement is I'm here to impact the lives of the people whose names I will never know and who may never know my name. So it's an echo. It's the ripples on that lake. So I like my two youngest grandkids are 3 and 5, and because I understand neuroscience and psychology, I know there's a lot of stuff that is amazing that goes on between us that they'll never remember, but their emotional source code will,
Yeah.
right? And so one of the things that I do that is that I whisper to them, and I go, "Do you want to know a secret?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "G-Dad loves you. G-Dad's always gonna love you. G-Dad will love you no matter what happens. Even if G-Dad's not here, G-Dad's gonna keep loving you because you're kind and you're caring. And what are you?" And I say, "What are you?" And they know what they are because I tell them, right, all the time. And they go, "I'm a beautiful soul, G-Dad." I go, "That's right." "And when will G-Dad love you?" And they go, "Always." Right? Not always, always, because we do it with a Persian accent. I'm not Persian, but I just love that accent. Always. So Jihad loves you. And I say, "When does Jihad love you?" Always. Why? "I'm a beautiful soul." Yes, my love, that's what you are.
And how, yeah, I don't even care. I'm crying a little bit. How can we not end on something more beautiful? Thank you so much for this. I'm like, I don't even care. I'm crying.
Good.
Early on as a wannabe journalist, all about the composure and the whatever, and I noticed now I'm like, oh, I'm crying. It's happening.
Important.
Thank you. It's beautiful, and that's kind of the message that we try and give, right? You don't have to earn the worth. You just are.
You're already a beautiful soul. Everything else is just stacked up on top of it. And if you can remember that, then you can understand that you're a gift to the world. And therefore you can become a gift not only to the world, but you're a gift from that which is, and therefore your gift is to the world. And have you screwed up? Yes. Now, what if that is the structure by which you give? Your screw ups are the structure by which you add value to the world. What about that?
Your screw ups are the structure with which you give value to the world.
The trauma you went through, the difficulty you had, right? The stuff that went on in Natasha's life that you couldn't comprehend that turned her into the magnificent woman she is wouldn't have happened if she hadn't gone through that shit. And you look at her and you go, "Oh, her hair's nice and she's got a life together. And look at her. She talks to these people and she's with those people." Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
All those things are a million different turns. Like I said, not one decision, a million different little decisions that often resulted in screw ups, that resulted in embarrassment, that have made her come back. Anything that is an embarrassment in your life is just a better story for later.
Yeah, I often say, look at it like a stand-up comic, and put some distance and make fun of you, roast your own self, and then you can find a little humor and a little distance from all
But
of
you can add value with that.
it. Yeah, I hope
What you
so.
need to understand is you are here to serve.
Mm.
You are here on this planet to serve. You came here to serve. You came here to give the thing you needed. At any point in your life, you are here to serve those who are not 10,000. You don't have to be 10,000 steps ahead of them. You can be 3 steps ahead of them.
Yeah.
Just to show them a little bit of light, because we're all walking through the darkness and we're all carrying a flashlight, and that flashlight only lights 3 feet in front. So be 3 feet in front and show them the way. So that's all it is. Embrace the embarrassment, embrace the failures, because all of those are just going to give you another flashlight to help people down that path. You're a beautiful soul. And above all, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious, because courage plus curiosity equals love.